Thank you, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. I'm Dania El Hassan. I am a product manager on the AutoCAD team. At the time of giving this presentation a few months ago, I was the web product manager. So I've been on the AutoCAD team for about 5 years now, and kind of saw this project through from taking this desktop code base to the web. And I'll talk a little bit about that today. My architects, both of them are in Singapore. And so Sam and Thomas from Google have been really gracious in agreeing to answer any really technical questions. A lot of the historical questions on our journey to the web, I obviously will be able to help you answer. Please do feel free to stop and ask questions. I'll leave some time at the end as well. So let me talk a little bit about our journey from AutoCAD desktop to the web. If you don't know that much about AutoCAD, it's a computer-aided design tool. You may have been walking around the gallery now for some time, and a lot of the products that you see here have been created and designed in AutoCAD or AutoCAD and some other Autodesk tools. And so we do like to celebrate our customer work here. We do everything from architecture and engineering, construction, manufacturing, and it really is a tool that's used by the most innovative of those designers. So it's been around quite a long time. We have a long history, 35 years of innovation, primarily on the desktop. One of the funny things is that it was disruptive when the PC came about, right? So with this disruptive PC came AutoCAD, this kind of cheap, low-end software that continued to innovate over time and to bring new tools to designers across the world. And so now it's really quite a well-used product. I'm sure all of you know someone that uses AutoCAD or have used it yourself, perhaps as an engineer. So prior to AutoCAD, customers were really using pen and paper. They were kind of attached to their desks, if you will. There were giant drafting rooms with kind of drafting pencils on Mylar, and there were these rooms of people doing pen and paper design. And so AutoCAD was disruptive and tried to kind of unleash our customers from these desktops in a way. And so the vision from that beginning was to reduce the time it takes to innovate, to allow for faster iterations, and to design optimal solutions in a way that would actually change the way of working altogether. And I think over time that did start to occur. So in 92, we released AutoCAD for Mac. And in 1993, the internet was born, starting with Mosaic, Netscape, and Explorer. And we launched AutoCAD. The first connected AutoCAD was 2000i, I for the internet. And then in 2010, we acquired a product that had AutoCAD Web and Mobile. So it was a new code base that we introduced to our ecosystem. And with that, web and mobile, we had that new vision again, which was to free designers from those desks and to really advance the innovation outside of the office. And so we've been trying to do that for some time. So the AutoCAD Web was going to be the way that customers could work from anywhere, to use those precision drafting tools that they've come to rely on to kind of advance their innovation in design, and to kind of get there at home or on the go. AutoCAD's standard file type is the DWG, and just for some scale of how big this industry is, 2.5 million DWGs get opened every day, and there are more than 10 billion DWGs in the cloud today. And I will say that most of our customers are still not yet in the cloud, so this only represents a really small fraction of the amount of work being done in the DWGs today across all industries. So in order to realize that vision, we tried first by acquiring this company, AutoCAD WS, which was a web and mobile app, and in the web, it was a Flash application. So I don't know if I need to explain to you what happened to that Flash application, but we were able to create a drafting tool that created lines, arcs, and circles on the web for the first time in 2010. In 2014, we actually wanted to rewrite the application in HTML5 and in JavaScript, and that was something that seemed like the future of AutoCAD. And so we started rewriting all of the code base of AutoCAD in the web, again, beginning with lines, arcs, and circles. But the browser technology really wasn't ready for AutoCAD. We started to hit some limitations around that time, and started to think about the problem differently. When we did hit these barriers, we found that we were rewriting and resolving the problems we'd already solved on desktop. And that's when the technology started to really change. And so in 2016, we began exploring AutoCAD translations from C++ using the Emscripten engine to get it to JavaScript. And we went to JavaScript, ASM.js first, and launched for the first time ever a real DWG AutoCAD viewer in the web in 2016. And then the toolchain got even better, right? So we got this viewer that we actually released to the public and did beta testing with that viewer, and customers were able to manipulate the drawing directly using ASM.js. We were still kind of thinking about what kind of performance issues we were going to have already at that time, given that we had a very large code base and that we couldn't port everything all at once. The process of getting to the web meant that we had to start to remove these Windows dependencies from our code base. And so that actually began even before 2016 and 17, about a year before that, to start modularizing and sanitizing, we called the code base, to remove it of its dependencies on Windows. So, we started thinking about where would we be able to kind of improve on the performance in the web. We did start starting to unwind some of these tools that we really wanted to see in the web. So in September of 2017, that tool chain started changing and helping us get beyond kind of the viewing into measure, into lines, arcs, and circles again. And so in a short period of time, we were able to kind of come back to the same application as before, but now with the ability to scale much, much faster using the Emscripten toolchain and WebAssembly. So finally, March 22 of last year, we were able to hit that great milestone of releasing AutoCAD Web to the public and unlock that power of AutoCAD and kind of go beyond these lines, arcs, and circles and the performance kind of limitations that we had using Flash, HTML, ASM.js even, and get to WebAssembly. So this was a big milestone for us. It also, it happened just before our Google I/O last year, and we showed up on main stage for being one of the apps that was kind of taking this to the next level so quickly. And that was a really great experience for us. And so now we've been on the market for some time and are actually seeing users in production using the application. So I'm hoping this is going to play. I have a little bit of a video of the AutoCAD Web App running. Okay, well, it popped out, but hopefully you can still see my screen. No. Give me 1 second. I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way and drag a window. So this is the AutoCAD Web App running. This is almost a year ago now. We've had a lot more tools since then, again, because we were able to kind of leverage that tool chain to kind of bring more and more tools to market very quickly. So this is just, a typical residential designer making some edits to a kitchen island using the same AutoCAD core tools that you would on desktop. And so obviously this is a subset of the tools that you can use on desktop, but you can see the performance is really nice, and customers are really able to do a lot of that foundational workflows in the web already. And so we're really excited about being able to now finally realize that vision of unlocking those customers from their desks and really being able to work wherever they are. And so very similarly, our mobile app is going through a very similar process. And so with those two tools, we now have been able to realize our vision in a much different way than we were before. So, so great. Let me see if I can get this off the screen again. And one second. So I wanted to kind of spend 1 second on how we actually get there. So this AutoCAD core C++ base, code base gets translated using the Emscripten engine, and that gets to WebAssembly binary, and then machine-specific binary interprets that. So that's kind of the canvas portion of our application. And then we have React and TypeScript UI and a component library that we develop in-house and obviously leverage public as well. And then importantly, the JavaScript UI interacts with the WebAssembly modules through a messaging API. So this is asynchronous, which is different in the web. Again, if you have really technical questions, I'm going to ditch you back to Sam and Thomas. But this is kind of the way that we were able to get around some of the challenges that we have. So one being that we have a really large code base. It is larger than, I think, most applications in the web. It takes a long time to build, and so that's been a big challenge for us. But also the application start time creates sort of a UX challenge for our customers as well. And so that's something that we're actively working on. Even now, we were talking about it half an hour ago over dinner. The other thing is this kind of paradigm of synchronous versus asynchronous interaction. And so on the desktop, you have, this assumption of synchronous interaction. And, the messaging API was really the way that we solved for that in the web, because you can't really assume that you're going to be able to get a response back from the application. And so, I'm not going to go into a ton more detail on that. There's some more challenges around shared memory and memory access. The security model in the web is very different. But that's something that we're actively working on with Chrome, with Edge actually as well, that are trying to build on top of Chrome. And that's where, I think there's still a lot of room for us to continue growing. I'm going to skip this. This is the same video again, but because the video is not playing very well, I'm going to skip over it. It's basically just showing how smooth the performance, the WebAssembly code base is running, and that it really helped us unlock those deeper capabilities of AutoCAD. But you saw a little bit of that already, so I'm gonna stop here and go to questions. I guess while you guys are thinking about your wonderful questions, I will give a little bit of a shameless plug. We had a developer that left us to go to a startup last week, and so we are looking for a developer to come join our team, one that would, be able to harness the power of WebAssembly would be fantastic. We're also hiring for a product manager to sit next to me on my team. So if you know people that want to work on kind of the same vision of AutoCAD and unlocking the power of AutoCAD on web and mobile, please come find me after the fact.
So questions, all right.
Hi, so you said early on that you were de-windowsing the application. How did the Mac version work then?
So the Mac version, that's a great question, actually. So we used a lot of if-defs to remove our dependencies there. And obviously that's not a very scalable way to build if you need to build now a mobile application and a web application and, think of your other platform that doesn't exist application. And so we kind of unlearned that lesson or relearned that lesson and removed the dependencies of a very specific code base. And we tried to start basically with the things that we thought were most critical, right? So that's why we started with viewing first, delivered fully functioning modules to the web and mobile applications, and then continue to go from there. So we would try to, let's say, sanitize the line command, and the line command also had, a module that was connected to Circle, and so we would get a lot of these tools for free as we continued to develop further. And so, the combination of that and being able to rely on the Emscripten toolchain to just kind of translate that on the web. Obviously, there are different paradigms on other platforms, but that platform-specific layer became a lot smaller.
Hi, Dania. I have a question about product. For regular desktop version, AutoCAD, AutoCAD LT, many companies developed extensions. So how it should work for WebAssembly? So what
That is a fantastic question that I don't know that we have an answer on yet. But obviously, with the paradigms that the web has, the sort of linkability, the ability to extend web products today is, you could argue, beyond that of desktop. And we have a long history of extensibility and customizations on desktop that we're evaluating ways of bringing that to the web product as well. So fantastic question. I'm sorry I don't have an answer for you, but that's definitely something we're thinking actively about.
So looks like you basically redeveloped all the UI to be entirely web-based. How much of your code base ended up being reusing the native, and how much of it is built from the ground up for the web?
So is your question specifically around the UI, or is it about the Canvas interaction?
Yeah, I mean, how much of the product ended up being UI and basically new for this the web version, and how much of it were you able to reuse?
Great question. So from the code base perspective, the vast majority of it was reused. We did, because AutoCAD has such a long history, there's 7 ways of doing every single tool. And so one of the things we wanted to be really thoughtful of is which one of those paradigms do we want to persist. So we started to take a more opinionated point of view on which version of the tool that we wanted to port, and kind of beyond that, maybe not porting certain things, right? Things that don't make sense in the web, things that are old, in terms of the way that people work, and we tried to take that opinionated point of view and bring it to the web. So most of the time, the experience was very consistent, familiar, powerful, like the AutoCAD desktop experience, but also where it made sense, we took a different approach. For instance, the measure tool, we didn't port that 100% directly from desktop. We actually took a paradigm that was on the mobile code base and said, we actually want to make measure like that. And we kind of used the core engine from the desktop, but we actually ended up porting back the code from the quick measure tool, which basically allowed you to hover in a space and get coordinates of anything kind of close to it. And we actually ported that back to the desktop version, because now we have the shared code base. We were able to kind of innovate, test on the web, and then bring it back to desktop.
Actually, quick follow-up question, because you bring up mobile, which is really interesting. Have you considered sharing any of the front-end code between web and mobile?
Yes. There's always a conversation about native versus not, right? And so far, we haven't found the right opportunity to actually take web code and put it on a mobile device in the native applications. Whether or not the web application itself should run on a mobile device is still a big question. There are certain form factors that certainly makes a lot of sense, especially if you are using React components that can kind of help you be really flexible. But so far we haven't done that. I think one of the challenges is still the performance of a really large code base, and doing that on a mobile device still isn't where we'd like it to be, especially because we already have a native application. So again, taking a really opinionated point of view on that, and saying, if you want to use a mobile device, use the mobile application that's sort of optimized for that device.
So currently the desktop is still like the main platform. Do you see like a point, even hypothetically in the future, where the sort of web base will be the main application, or is that not on the table?
That's a really fun question to think about. As a web product person, of course, I think that that's a possibility. I think in the near term, what we'd like to do is offer flexibility to our customers. So if you're an AutoCAD subscriber, you actually just get access to desktop, web, and mobile, and we let you pick. And today, we aren't seeing customers that are like, I'm only using web, or I'm only using mobile. They're really using a suite of tools together. And so that's a great place to be. If we can make a product that's a great experience that leverages kind of the core strengths of the web application and the web in general, and customers really just want to be there, then I could see it kind of being a more viable future that it might, eventually replace a desktop. But today, that's not the case, right? There's so much you can do with the desktop application. It's still the place that you really want to go for precision drafting, that power, the core tool that you've customized to the nth degree and has all of the capabilities that you're used to. So when you're at your desktop at work, you'll use AutoCAD Desktop. When you're in other environments, you'll want to use web and mobile, and we'll leverage the core strengths of the platform to offer you more tools and more flexibility in how you engage with AutoCAD.
Can you give an example of some kind of feature that exists in AutoCAD Desktop that doesn't exist maybe yet in web, or you don't have any plans to bring to web, and some of the challenges that exist in porting features from your desktop code base to the WebAssembly code base?
Sure. There are a lot of features that don't exist in the web. We're basically just taking the point of view of like, try to get the kind of core foundational workflows completed first, and then you can kind of branch off in another direction. And so one that maybe already in, but is kind of on the edge here was hatch. So the ability to create a pattern that fills a space. And so there's a bit of complexity in selecting lots of different pieces, and to display the hatch at like the graphics performance in the web is different than desktop. You can rotate and change the hatch on desktop. We may not offer that, at the beginning on desktop. So features like that, we decided eventually that we would port them to web because they were foundational to our customers. The example being, if you create a wall and then you hatch it with a certain pattern that has triangles in it, it's concrete. If you hatch it with a different pattern, it's sand, and you probably don't want to make sand walls. So, that became critical for our customers to complete very basic workflows. Another example is a customer just wants to kind of sketch a couple of rooms and say, this is the area of this room. Very basic foundational workflow, but it wasn't being able to complete without hatch. And so, when our customers kind of complain against the edges of our application, we'll continue to port those features in as they make sense. But it's a balance. It's a balance between features that already exist and features that are really unique to the web. And so now there's more discussion, more thought about how do we actually leverage the linkability, the collaboration, the connectedness of the web to be able to create new features that don't already exist on desktop.
Yeah, short question. Are you using the same rendering engine for web and for desktop?
Yes, but I will admit that this is at the end of my kind of technical expertise. But essentially, when we decided to port the code base from desktop, it has a 2D graphics system that we use, and we've ported part of it to the web the same way that we've done the core engine, the one that does calculations, for instance, and real DWG, the database that's behind it. So yes, it's the same engine. In a very similar way, it's a subset of the engine. It's not the whole engine. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I saw brief when it described React components or React UI, like some aspect of WebAssembly UI, or the UI component library. Is that like a web component, or like what would that look like in WebAssembly? And And also, if
Oh, good question.
if I may, React, like you know, I guess has React 360 now, and like maybe I know, I guess leveraging the web for other use cases, and I thought I saw maybe a frames per second rate on the video earlier. So is there any use case of like VR or trying to test out like a 3D engine or anything?
Good question. Many questions. The frames per second is because I was probably showing you a dev build and we were testing for performance, graphics performance. So I apologize there, but it's something that we're actively trying to improve. So that's probably why that was there. On the React side, we're using a lot of JavaScript components. We have Storybook that's set up so that you can basically plug and play a lot of components. I don't know that I'm answering your question correctly, but that's kind of the short answer to your question. On the VR side, I think we're still quite a ways away from that for AutoCAD. There are other applications in the Autodesk kind of ecosystem that are a lot better suited for that, right? So 3D tools that are kind of more in the visualization space. So you can imagine, you know, a Revit model being used in 3ds Max in a game engine that you could then, you know, visualize a space. AutoCAD is more on the core kind of 2D documentation space. We do design as well. But for the use cases that we see in our customer base so far, the vast majority of them are still in 2D documentation. And so we still want to continue to leverage AutoCAD for its core strengths there as well. Does that answer your question?
Library or
Yeah, so the question was, is that a web component library? And yes, it is. Yeah.
I think we have the last two questions.
So in order to do the ports, you have to make a bunch of changes. And I'm wondering, like, what maybe APIs or changes you are encouraging the desktop team to make or use, what kind of APIs you're encouraging them to use so that it makes your job of porting easier?
Good question. I think kind of at its core, you're asking a little bit about how we organizationally have shifted the way that we develop our products. And so we do have a desktop core team that is, its sole job is to kind of take requirements from desktop, web, and mobile together, coordinate those efforts, and make sure that when they do sanitize, that they're thinking about all the platforms, all the target platforms that they're going to get to. And so one of the things we wanted to do in that development process was to show value at each phase. And so we're at phase, I think, 16 or something now, since the early days of 2015, just trying to show that we could actually create a viewer. And that was the first phase, was really what's the minimum that we need to do to get to something that's viable on web and mobile. And so I know that's not really answering your question, but that conversation happens very frequently, every day, all the time, desktop and mobile and web getting together kind of in a big way on a, let's say, 6-week basis, where we have these kind of massive prioritization exercises of what do each of the platforms need and how can we think about what we're going to get in 6 weeks after that. But also, let's say we're building out the measure feature today. We engage the mobile platform and the web platform and the Fabric platform all at the same time, so we can plan for that future together. And so without getting into the weeds of every specific thing that we ask for on the API, it's really changing the way that we engage as a product team together.
We're actually over time, so
Sorry.
no worries. A great round of questions. Will you be around during the social?
Yes, I will. I'll
After
be
this,
around for a little while.
I want to ask Daniel for more questions, and a round of applause, please.
Thank you.